Two, three.
Hi Dave, I'm Edwin, and I'm gonna discuss about the first challenge we faced on this project. So the first challenge was that we were programming Galaga, but like the movement of the enemies was so complicated that we had to change to Centipede. So yes, our project has gone to a new direction. We had to completely change the game, and right now we're presenting to you Centipede.
Hey Dave, so this is Hansel. So now my contributions to the project is so I made the mushrooms, the mushroom.h and the mushroom.cpp. So but then I had Edwin's help to do that because I found it quite hard to actually make the mushrooms like appear randomly in the shape of a square as opposed to a rectangle. But then after that, we figured that out. Then I also did the health. So that's like basically the life of the player. So I made the health.h and the health.cpp file. So there I just stored like the health icons in like a vector, and then after that, every time like the player dies, so it's gonna erase that specific index of the vector, so that there's so it's gonna like decrease by one each time. Then after that, I also did the score for like the number which displays the score on the game. That's in the centipede.cpp file. So all I did there was basically just set the initial score to 0, and then after that, I just like total like all the scores, and then I updated the scores value each time like the whole window updates, and then yeah, that's about it for me. Hi Dave, this is Hansel. So the challenge I faced in this project was the first thing is based on the time. So the other three, Limas, Edwin, and Raymond, are all in the U.S. and I'm in Indonesia. So the time difference makes it hard to meet. So that's why we decided on splitting the work. So me, I did the mushrooms and then the health bar and the score as well. And then we also work together on like whenever we have the problems, we would debug them together. Like we see each other's screen. So the main challenge I had was on the mushrooms. So the mushroom's supposed to be random, and then after that, but then the problem is the window itself is like a rectangle. So like when it's hard, I found it hard for me to randomize the mushroom so that it would look as if like it's just in a square. So then after that, it took me quite some time to like play around with the numbers and stuff, and then I finally did it. And then after that, for the health bar, it was also hard for me to like. For some reason, it didn't work. I don't know why. Like the code was like okay, everything. Like I asked the other three, and they said that's fine. But then at the end, it was like because the sprite that I downloaded from the internet's too big. So when I load it to like the program itself, it's not actually showing it on the screen. So like I had to resize the sprite itself and then upload it, and then it started working. So yeah, for the score, I just updated like every frame and like just output it to the program. And then for the mushroom, so I stored it in a vector, and then after that, every time like the player does something wrong, then like it's gonna erase that specific index of the vector. So then when it's displaying after each frame, if like let's say the player loses 1 life, then it's gonna so it's instead of showing the original 3 lives, it's only gonna show 2 lives. So yeah, and then for the mushroom, I just used the for loop to display all the mushrooms with the random positions. Yeah, that's about it for me.
Okay, hey Dave. So this is Raymond, and the challenges that I have is when I needed to at first I needed to connect the game into Dave Station, and as I did it once on our last project on Final Super Mario, so I was in charge of this one. But the harder challenge in this one is that um, I need to compile all four of us codes, all the four of us codes to the Dave Station without the physical presence of each of them. So like I needed to wait for time when they are available so that we can work it together on combining it to the Dave Station. And mostly there are a lot of bugs that happen that does not work on Dave Station but works on their computer. So I needed to like read their code one by one, which is a kind of a hassle. And the most problem is with the drawings on how they draw. They usually draw it like with their code. It works on at events, but when I decided to try to draw it on window.draw on your on Dave Station's draw, like it gives me like a lot of errors. So one thing that I did was all this all their classes is a child of SF drawable so that we can draw it immediately on Dave Station, which makes it compatible with Dave Station. Another part that I contributed to was doing the centipede collision with the mushroom and the centipede collision with the bullets that the player shot. And this is the hard part of the game where I need to wait. Actually, this is the part where Edwin and I do it together. So at first we made a head and a body class where the where we decided to make like a different class for the head of the centipede and the body of the centipede. But at the end, we only used the body centipede because the head centipede because the body centipede does not work with the collisions of the mushroom. Like their calculations is not exactly the same. So when the centipede head collides with the mushroom, it goes like slightly more than the body, which makes the game look so weird, where the head is like halfly attached to the body of the centipede. So what we decided to do was like we make a vector of heads where it stores where the first index of that vector stores the head of the centipede, and the rest is the body of the centipede. And another part that's hard for us to do is the splitting of the head. No, the splitting of the body when it collides with the bullet. So when a body is collided with a bullet, we need to make it into a mushroom. And when it changes to a mushroom, um, the hard part is at first we tried to use an enemy class, which does not work, that we showed you, and we tried using a vector pointer, which also does not work. We tried a lot of data types where at last we asked you for help and you suggested to us using a 2D vector, which makes it possible. And the hard part is that in debugging all those things, we accidentally like changed this to K, and our code like crashed immediately, which we didn't realize. So it took us like a lot of time to debug it. And another part is that we need to calculate exactly which body that is shot, and we need to check for like which body part is shot, like if it is the head or the middle of the body or the last part of the body. So if at first we check if the centipede size is 1. So if it is 1, that means it's only the head that is left. So we immediately erase it. But if the head is shot first, when there are still bodies attached to it, we delete that head and change the sprite of the second of the body that is next to the head into a new head. And that's basically what we did. Thank you.
Another of the challenges we faced was definitely the bullet class. Well, not the bullet class, but the implementation of the bullet in the main. So the bullet class in the main, what would happen is that so the bullet will shoot like it would have no like timer that would like split the bullets. So that means that it would kind of like look like a laser because one would be on top of the other, on top of the other, on top of the other. So what? So I tried first to using a stack or a queue to pop them, but it would pop more than once, even if I use like the events and stuff. So I had to change it to a shooting timer, which was just like an integer, and I would just plus every time, which that's what it fixed. That's one of the contributions I did. And then I also did the body class and the head class, but at the end we never used the body class. So basically, I did the head class, which later was used to create a 2D vector of the centipede. I also did I helped Hansel do the mushroom class. I did the animation class, and one of the challenges about animation was that my M frames were in 4. That means that any spreadsheet that had less than 4 animations, I had to manually change them because it goes up to 4. So if a spreadsheet had 2, it would iterate to the first 2, and the other 2 would remain blank. So like the animation or the sprite would disappear for like a couple of seconds because there was literally no sprite there. And also for the also for the when we were trying to do the mushroom class with Hansel, what was hard was getting correctly the animation of the mushroom with the collision of the bullet. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for me. Alright, just run the video, see if there's volume 1.
Hi, it's me, Dimas. And the contribution that I made to the group is I made the spider.h, spider.cpp, player.h, player.cpp, and then flee.h, and then flee.cpp. So I was in charge of the enemies that have to attack the player and make it lose lives. And then every time the bullet collides with a flea or a spider, all of that have to like get deleted all the vector. And one of the challenges that I encounter while making the flee.h, flee.cpp in the centipede is that I was thinking of summon the flea one by one every 5 seconds by pushing it to a flea vector. And then to do this, I have to modify the time. Wait, let me show you the code. Where is that? Wait, where is this? Here. So to summon the flea every 5 seconds, I have to mod 5 the time. I use frame time, and then I mod 5, and if it is equal to 0, then I push it to a vector. I mean, I made a new flea first, and I push it to a vector, and then that vector will be attacking the flea, so it'll move from up to down. And then the challenge is that at first I didn't know that the vector will be pushed endlessly because apparently the time actually counts for millisecond too. And then since I use static cast, it'll round the millisecond to second. So let's say it is the second, it is the 5 second, and then 5.1 second will be rounded to 5, and then 5 mod 5 will be equals to 0, and then it will make a new flea and then push it back to a to the vector. But then it doesn't. But then 5.1 will go to 5.2 millisecond, and then it will push it back to the vector. Then it will be pushed kind of like endlessly until the next second, which is 6.
and then just for it to stop pushing to the vector. So for me to solve this, I just use a Boolean repeat. At first it'll be false, and then after it goes to 5, it'll be true, and then after it is true, then it will not go into this again, because if 5.1 mod 5, I mean, if the 6 equals to 0, then it will go back to false, then it will go back to the first function again, then it will push it back to a vector. Then this will solve the problem that I counter. And yeah, and for the spider, I was having not actually a challenges. I just have to figure out how the spider has to move zigzag, like bouncing ball. But then I remember the SFML ball assignment, and then I just use the algorithm that I made there. Use the touch ground and touch wall, and yeah, basically that's it. Thank you.